Hey guys, so one of the things that happened when I was doing final buffing of the Diegocaster body, I was buffing it out with a t-shirt as some fellow forum members recommended, but there were still a few rough surface areas around the edges that the t-shirt wasn't getting. So continued to use the t-shirt, but I used, I don't know where it went to, here it is, Stock Sheen and Conditioner, which is kind of a creamy substance with a very fine abrasive in it. And it normally works fine for gentle surface buffing, but I think I either used too much of it, pressed too hard with the t-shirt, or maybe it's just getting old and it's clumping together. I also I had broken my cardinal rule and rubbed against the grain, and so I ended up with some minor surface scratches that clearly stood out because they were contrary to the grain. And I tried buffing them back with the t-shirt only, and it just wasn't working. So I ended up going back to trusty 1000 grit sandpaper and some dish soap and water. And I basically wet sanded the whole back to about, I don't know, a layer or two thick, basically till the scratches were gone and it was all even, and I started over. So I'm about 4 coats in with my Tru-Oil application now. I'm going to show you really quickly how I do my application process, just so you can see how simple it is to apply Tru-Oil. So I'm going to start out with some paper towel just to show you, if you're in the Southeast anywhere and you have Publix grocery stores, you can get this Greenwise paper towels. They're basically made from recycled content. But any kind of, I hate to say it, cheaper paper towel will probably work as long as it's not too rough. So if you look at this closely, I'm going to see if I can get in here with the light where you can see this has a quilted surface. This isn't the really soft, super kind of powdery, super absorbent high-end stuff that you sometimes get. This is kind of just a happy middle ground. But it does have kind of a soft surface to it. The quilting helps spread it around, but it doesn't generally cause streaking. And I do it with the little, I guess they all go inward. You wouldn't want to do anything with, if you had the surface with little bumps sticking out, you'd want the kind of the more concave side of it. And I fold it down about like this. And I have my guitar body here. See if I can get where you can see that. And so what I'm going to do, this is going to be super quick because you have to work with this stuff very quickly. Tru-Oil is kind of like a varnish. It's an oil that goes on oily, but it's very thick and it starts to set up very quickly. Some people like to thin this with, I forget what they use. I think they use naphtha or mineral spirits or something. You'd have to go on one of the forums and find out, but you can use other substances to thin this out so it's not quite so thick. It'll help you get thinner coats. I've never done that. I don't like playing chemistry set too much in a closed apartment if I don't have to. And I've had pretty successful results with this straight out of the bottle. So that said, once you've opened one of these, you always want to store it upside down, because what can happen is there's 2 holes in the top of the container here, and air can get in there and it can cause it to kind of set up on the surface of the Tru-Oil, and it'll just shorten the lifespan of it. So if you keep it upside down, it keeps air out of there. Just a little trick I picked up. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to shake this up a little bit just to make sure that it's well mixed. Next thing, take the cap off. You can see here, so I'm just going to wipe this off. You can see here, I punctured 2 holes in here with like a screwdriver so that I can easily pour this. So there's different ways to do it. I've done it both pouring it right on the body and spreading it around and pouring it on the cloth. Either one works. Just kind of depends on your preference. Right now, I'm just pouring it on the cloth. That seems to be working a little better for me right now. So I'm just going to pour some of this out here. And I'm going to start spreading it in a circular fashion on the surface of this guitar body, right? Going to try and get all the way out to the edges, move quickly, and then once I've spread it around, I'm going to move with the grain the entire length of the body. I'm going to do this in both directions so I don't get clumping at one end of the body. Okay, that spreads it out nice and thin. Do the next section. I like to do it in half or thirds. Move quickly, spread this stuff out, and then leave it alone. That's the hardest thing to do with this application method, because if you're at all anal retentive, you're going to want to mess with things and you're going to mess it up because it starts to get sticky pretty quickly. And if you keep messing with it after it's kind of past its setup point, you're going to do weird things to the surface of your finish. So, see, this far side is already getting to a point where it's pretty well there. So, okay, I think that's a pretty even coverage. Coats are very thin. I like to go with the grain because if you do get some minor streaking from the application process, they're hidden by the grain. And if anything, they'll kind of align with the grain and they'll bend the light along the grain so they won't stand out as much. See, now this is what I mean here. There's one spot up there. All right, so as you can see, the trick really is to get it on and leave it alone. That's pretty good. I'm not going to mess with it anymore. Now the last thing that I do is I take this and I fold it over so I have a clean side. And I just go around the edges here, because occasionally what will happen, especially as you're first putting it on and your cloth is very wet, you'll push some right off the edge of the body and you'll get a run mark down your side. And sometimes it'll run all the way down and kind of underneath, and it'll stick to, this is wax, regular kitchen wax paper I've used here. It'll stick to the wax paper and then it'll stick to your finish that's facing downward, in this case the front. And when you go to pick it up, a chunk of your finish comes off. So you don't want that. So, and then I just kind of pick it up, double check there's nothing underneath it. Take care to grab it by the sides. Fingerprints will show up. If you get your fingers on the top here, you don't want that. I take these and I put them in a sink or a bathtub and someplace away from anything that can catch fire, because as they dry out, I've never had it happen, but they can catch fire. So rather than risk that, I just put them somewhere, let them kind of thoroughly dry out, and then I discard them in the trash. If they're still wet and you put them in a kind of a closed area, like a canister, or put them out in your trash, sometimes they can start a fire. You don't want that. So, and then one last thing I do is I wipe the Tru-Oil bottle off. Sometimes it'll run down the sides, underneath, around the edges, and cause the cap to stick. You don't want any of that. Recap tightly, store upside down. Okay, and that's it. I feel like I got a pretty good coating there, spread everything out pretty well. But you can see very fast. By the end there, especially on the far side where I first applied, it was already starting to get sticky. If I messed with it too much, it was going to start either pulling on the paper towel and you get streaks of stuff, or it was going to start getting gummy. And you don't want to mess with it like that. You want the trick is, while it's wet and while the finish is movable, you want to move it around as much as possible and spread it out as far as possible so it thins it out and you get a nice thin, even coat across the whole surface. The real trick with Tru-Oil is to be patient and take your time to build those thin layers up slowly. And then every couple of coats, you're going to want to feel your surface. If you feel some rough edges, then take a folded up t-shirt and just buff it out. Or you can wet sand it also. But if you wet sand, I recommend either using like water or mineral spirits and maybe some dish soap. The dish soap just helps to lubricate it. It helps your sandpaper to move without sticking to the wood too much and grabbing too much. The mineral spirits is less likely to soak in and soak into the wood and cause it to crack or swell or what have you. Although I've never had a problem with that. My way of getting around that part is I keep like a old t-shirt or a towel or something, and as I'm wet sanding, I'll wet the sandpaper, wet sand a little, wipe it off. And I just do a tiny bit at a time because you don't want to oversand. You'll get scratches, which will get buried in subsequent coats, and you'll get what we call witness lines. Tru-Oil is a type of finish that stacks on top of previous layers. It doesn't melt into them, whereas shellac and lacquer will melt into previous layers. So scratches and imperfections are not as critical with those finishes because they get kind of absorbed in by subsequent layers. Whereas with Tru-Oil, you really have to be careful because you'll actually encase the scratches in subsequent finish layers, and hence witness lines. So just take your time, a little bit of sanding, wipe it off, check it. You just want to do enough to get it where it's smooth. It doesn't have to be buffed out and highly polished. You're going to do that later. You just kind of want to get it smooth and even and get any imperfections out of it so you can build your subsequent layers. Otherwise, what will happen is you'll get little high spots with those imperfections, and the more layers of finish that you put on there, the bigger they get. So they become like, they go from little hills to little mountains, as it were, microscopic little mountains of finish, and they take longer to sand out later. So I hope this has been helpful, guys. This went a little bit longer than I expected to, but I tried to kind of zip through it. If you have any questions or any of your own suggestions or ideas from using Tru-Oil, please leave them in the comments. As always, please, if you like my content here, please subscribe. Click the bell so you get notifications when I post new videos, and please comment or like. Thanks for supporting my channel, and good luck with your own projects. Take care.